Hi, welcome to Writing with Sandhya, the next episode. This is going to be fascinating. It's from science to spirituality, and we will be in conversation with Charith, who's the author of Evolution Cradle, the Aryan Origin. So what's it all about? We'll hear about it from him. He's also an artist, a drummer, a model, an actor, and a biomedical engineer living in Munich. That's a lot. Wow. So welcome, Charith, to the show. It's fascinating to hear about all the things that you do. We'll talk about your writing for sure, but welcome to the channel.
Thanks a lot, Sandhya, and thanks for having me here. Very excited to speak a little.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this is part of October is all about speculative fiction, and his book is, part of that genre. So let's start with, I just want to ask you, I think he's the best person to explain to us. What is the premise of your book, Charith? Can you tell us about it?
So for this specific book, Evolution Cradle, it's actually my love for storytelling. I've done a few non-fiction before that, but where my heart lies is in science fiction and in storytelling and narration. And I want to entertain people. I want to see that excitement on people. I want to hear about that excitement and see that expression when they see either my art or my stories for the first time. So it's basically that. And at the same time, it's also perennial questions like where do we come from, where do we go, and what is the past and what is the future, and who are we and what are we doing here? To answer certain all these questions, which I guess everybody wonders about, especially when just before falling asleep, you're like, yeah, where am I going? Where do I go next? Where am I from? Where are we from? And so that was basically the inspiration, the premise for this book.
That's fascinating. I think especially in the pandemic, I think people have a lot of time with themselves or to introspect or, just that extra time. So I think that's very much in line with, the whole world, what they're thinking about and, what everybody is going through. Yeah. I also wanted to look at the aspect of your evolution. So what's the evolution cradle of Charith, right? So first realized you want to be a writer. You seem to have done a lot of things in your life. So wanted to know a little bit more about you.
Absolutely. So creativity, the art is actually, I'm an artist at heart, and I like to be creative. I love to be creative. I'm an engineer by profession. Majority of my life I spent in science. So I always looked at combining both of these to combine science with art and things like that, and also just spirituality as well, and religion. You can see there are certain similarities between all of those, and that's basically what I wanted to write about as well. So I like since I was a kid, I like larger than life characters and stories and superheroes, basically comic books and superheroes, and I like history as well. And I found that there's a lot of similarity between these superheroes. Take any superhero from Marvel, for example, or DC Comics, and taking them and some of the mythologies like Norse mythology, not just Indian mythology, of course, Greek mythology, Norse mythology, and of course our own Indian mythology. There are a lot of similarities, and mainly it's one of the biggest common factor, common thing in all of these is humans with animal-like abilities in form or in strength. It's basically that was what was very fascinating. There's something very common about superheroes and certain characters in mythology. So that's when I started writing. So that was the evolution, basically. That was my own creative evolution. So I started writing more about, or started thinking more about, started painting more about, in this direction, about humans with animal-like abilities or animal forms, like our own gods, for example, also. So that is basically, I would say, my evolution cradle.
Okay, that's a fascinating painting behind you. What's that about, Charith? Oh, wow.
So
Yes.
this one, I painted this one, maybe you can see there.
Yeah.
I painted this one in, I believe, 2017, if I'm not wrong. And it's also inspired by cross-species genetics. And I started a series of these paintings called The Merge. So the Merge series, merge basically animal and human forms. It's basically about symmetry. And it's also philosophically saying that, all life forms are equal. We are not, no one is greater, there's no one better, all forms of life are equal. There's no one saying, you're not here to say humans are more superior than animals, or a certain form or a certain person is more superior than the other. It's basically saying everyone is equal. And you can see that in symmetry. If the form is the same, pretty much, we all have eyes, we all have noses, we all have mouth, we all make sounds, we all eat more or less the same kind of food, or we all eat to survive. So there's no need to say one form of life is more superior than the other. So in symmetry and in form, that's what I wanted to convey. The message is, yeah, I love animals.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
that's the message I wanted to convey with that. And also in my stories, so my book is also about the same theme. It's about cross species and cross species genetics, basically.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of philosophy that you've brought into your art, whether it's your painting or even your writing. I think a lot of philosophical thought, and I think, and like really, I think wonderful thinking, and which you're bringing out over there. It's just fascinating. I think it's just something the readers must go out and read to really understand what this is all about. So you're talking about these cross genre, even your book, though it's classified under science fiction, it looks like it's a blending of some science fiction, there's mythology coming in, there's also the thriller aspect to it. So can you talk more about that? Like, how was it to write about, across all these genres?
It's actually very exciting because these are the genres which I really love. Science fiction is something which I love. Movies, stories. I was previously talking about comic books. I love science fiction. I grew up with science fiction, and I'm a man of science as well, because professionally, that's what I do. That's what I learned, and I understand most of these things which I write about as well. I'm a biomedical engineer, so I write a lot about those as well, or I incorporate certain facts from science in this as well. I love history. I'm always trying to visit places where I can see. I've tried to look for answers of where we came from, and try to just see certain places where there's some things which inspire me, like in Greece. I've been to Greece, where it actually unlocked a lot of things which I didn't know before about how Greek mythology was influenced by Indian mythology. All this I've only learned once I visited the place. So yeah, so all of this led to it.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I think, with all of this, do you do a lot of research? Does a lot of research go into your story? Or is it just something which, the knowledge that you have and you try to put that in, or do you research further?
Oh, not at all. It's a lot of research. It's also visiting these places, like I was saying earlier. And for this book, for example, I spent 1 year just researching. And then I started writing the book because it was going to take much longer than that. The first year was just about trying to find a plot, trying to get ideas, gather ideas of a subject which I love, which is basically merging of science and religion and facts and history, and also incorporating some thriller elements, because that's also something I love. So yeah, it was 1 year of intense research. It was pretty much every day after work. I used to spend, even while I was having lunch or having dinner, I used to, at least when I had the time, I would read. When I did not have the time, I would just watch a video or a documentary about history, about ancient civilizations, and not just Indian civilizations, but ancient civilizations across the world, trying to connect the dots, trying to figure out which came first, and basically the chicken or the egg story. Was it the Indian mythology that came first, which influenced the Norse mythology, or was it the other way around? Who were the Vikings? What did the Vikings have to do with Indians, for example? That was something I recently learned as well a couple of years ago when I was in Scandinavia. So basically, I'm like a treasure hunter, knowledge hunter. I go to these places. A lot of information is available in books and videos, but there are a few things which you just have to go to the place and find out for yourself. Ask local people about it. These are things which are not mentioned, and even if they are, it's very difficult to imagine it unless you're actually there. So my first year I spent traveling, gathering facts, and then I just had to start putting my ideas on paper. So I started writing, and then at some point I had a writer's block, which everyone does. I just didn't know where to go next, or how to progress the story. So fortunately, coincidence, I took a trip with a few friends to Greece, and this is what I was talking about earlier, to Athens. And in Athens, in a museum, it was when I made the breakthrough, the connection between Greek mythology and Indian mythology. So it was and then right after that, that's it. The rest of the story just flew. The characters were able to interact with each other again. They took a sabbatical 1 year break. And that 1 year I was researching again and then continued the story.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's fascinating. I've just got so many thoughts and questions in my head. It sounds like you had a total immersion right into this whole area and topics and everything, and
Yes.
even traveling. So that's fantastic. You like to travel, so I think
Yes.
whatever you do, you are trying to get into that. Yeah. Was that the Acropolis Museum in Athens?
Yes.
Where it all came together. Yeah, yeah. I visited that. So yes.
You've been there?
Yeah, been there. Yes.
Oh yes, yes. That's actually where I made the breakthrough. It's actually, if you remember, there's a statue of Hercules. And if you look at the statue of Hercules over there, and they actually write about this as well, it looks very much similar to Krishna's statue with the flute. And so I looked at the statue. It was Hercules, Hercules as a boy, and there were too many similarities with Krishna, with our god Krishna. So I started reading about it. I started asking the guide about it. I just went there's a park. There's a small park next to it. If you remember, I just went there with my phone. I started Googling stuff. I started reading about it.
Okay.
And that led to another statue, which is in the Vatican Museum. And this one in the Vatican it's an exact replica, you could say, of Krishna. Just the attire is different, but the way he holds the flute, the way his legs are crossed, the way he has a peacock feather, it's exactly the same. The only thing is, they call it Hercules, you're calling it Krishna. And then I started researching it. Then I found out it was actually an Indo-Greek ambassador from Greece, of course, Heliodorus. He when he came to India, he learned about all these stories. Prior to that, Hercules never existed. So he took back the stories to Greece, Alcides also, and they took back the stories, and they had to adapt the stories so that the local folk would understand it. You cannot, a cow shepherd, somebody raises cows or within the family of, it's something that they won't understand. So they had to change a lot of things, from our serpent to Hydra, certain things, or certain mythical characters, creatures were also changed so that the local folk would understand it. But the underlying story is actually the same.
Right. And then I think with the Roman influence in Greece, I think that's how I guess probably all the stories travel there and sort of metamorphosed into, yeah.
Exactly.
It's interesting to think maybe it's just there's one single story in the world, and it's just so many different forms.
Yeah, all the other characters as well, which follow, like Indra, and there's so many characters, Krishna, all these, I'm sorry, Arjuna, all these characters have also been migrated and slightly changed, slightly tweaked, so that the locals would understand it. The locals would be able to relate to it better.
Yeah. I know. Under all of it, I think there is a common thread in all of, not just humanity, but all of life or the whole world, I think. Yeah. Yes.
Very true.
Yeah. So, so relating it to writing, so science fiction, one part of it is a lot of research. Are there any other ways in which it's different from writing just regular mainstream writing? I know you've written other books, but What are those books about, and how different was it from these?
So the other books I've written are non-fiction. They are pure, subject-based. One of them was my PhD research-based book about entrepreneurship. So those are different in just a few ways, actually. So mainstream books, romance or non-fiction books they are all based on facts, of course, and apart from romance. But there's a huge room for being creative in romance,
Right.
as opposed to non-fiction. Non-fiction is purely based on facts which have happened and trying to. Well, there might be some that might be similar in science fiction too, but non-fiction is basically facts which you're writing and with numbers and evidences of a certain, let's say, a certain firm doing things in a certain way, and then relating that to a case study and trying to give some tips or trying to give you some advice through that. Science fiction, I would say, well, it's science fiction, so it has to be based on science. It has to be tangible. It has to be believable. So you have to write or you have to collect your facts in such a way that the people will be able to believe it, and they, at least it has to be tangible for them that it can happen. Maybe it doesn't exist yet, but it can happen. Like, for example, if you're writing about Superman, let's say, you need to explain, or you need to give at least information of what is the propulsion system for Superman to be able to fly.
Yeah.
How is he able to fly without having any kind of jetpacks attached to his back? So you need to be able to make it more tangible, make it more believable. Probably this technology or whatever he is using doesn't exist now, but it should still be logical in a sense. It has to be plausible, exactly. And in my case, it's just not science fiction, it's also history. So these are facts which I cannot change. These are things that have happened. So basically, I was just relating history to the present, and also the present to the future. And also at the same time, keeping it very close to the facts as much as possible, in such a way that you can Google any of these and you can find these out for yourself. So there's not a lot of, and I just have to be creative in the way to connect all of these. But the rest of these are already there. They're facts. There's things which I cannot change.
Yeah, that's true.
Mainstream
So
writing,
yes.
In some way.
Sorry. So does that make it challenging for a plot line? You mentioned that you did have a writer's block for a while, and my next book is also, it's mainstream but speculative. So yeah, I think I also kind of face that. Sometimes does the plot become, or the things become too tight because you can't go. It has to be plausible. It has to be also based on reality. Did that restrict your creativity, or how did you deal with that or overcome it?
Yeah, so initially there were like hundreds of these roadblocks where I thought, okay, now there's no way out of this. I have to write it in such a way that the reader is going to believe it, and I have to also pull that from existing facts and connect that and show them evidence that this has happened in the past. So there's a high chance it can happen in the future as well. But of course, you will reach certain points. Hundreds of such instances have happened in my book where I did not know how to go ahead. So after a couple of days, I was able to find a way around it. So you just have to be even more creative then. You just those are the pressure points, and you just have to make a breakthrough to find a way around a fact. So a simple example, I wrote about Brahmastra, something all of us know, but no one actually ever described what it looks like. So in movies, you always see a Brahmastra being a bow and an arrow. But in description, it's described as a nuclear weapon. And you also hear famous scientists like Dr. Oppenheimer, who was on the Manhattan Project in the US during the first explosion or the first test of the atomic bomb, where he also quotes a line from Mahabharata, the 1,000 Suns, and now I become death. You probably heard of it. But the way he describes it is a nuclear bomb, it's not even a rocket, it's like a bomb. The way the movies describe it is a bow and an arrow. So you have to now it is up to you to find a balance between both of those and explain to a reader in a way that it is believable, that it can actually be like this, and it should also be very easy to imagine that. So it all depends on how you write, because you don't have a picture, you're just using words to describe that.
Yeah, it's much more challenging to write, I think. When it's just your own creativity, you can just write whatever you like, but this is far more challenging.
It is far more challenging, yeah, especially because I did mention Dr. Oppenheimer. I did mention what he quoted, a quote of what he quoted, actually, because he quoted the Mahabharata, so I quoted him quoting the Mahabharata. There's and you have to, and it's fact, so there's no escape.
Yeah. So and also I think some of these are like very large thoughts or things, but as you said, it's challenging to make it creative and make it simple, right, and understandable for the readers, and also to, I think, sustain the interest and pace. So how did you do that, to make it believable, or make it easy to read, and also to maintain the pace? Are there any techniques that you used, or how did you do that?
Yeah, initially, actually, that's a very good question. Initially, the language of the book seemed too complex for like I used it on a small test group, and majority of people said the language is slightly more complex for this subject. If the subject is too complex, then the language needs to be very simple, so that there's a balance, and then also reach more readers. And it should be understandable for someone living in Australia. It should be understandable for someone in South Africa. It should be understandable for someone in the south of India and the north of India equally. And if you make the language as complex as the story, the plot itself, it becomes too confusing. It's going to be too much. So with the help of an editor, I simplified, or sometimes even oversimplified, the language, so that and sometimes, because you're simplifying the language, you may have to use more sentences to explain the same thing, but it was worth it, because now everyone is able to understand what I'm trying to get to or get at.
So would you say that having a professional editor is very important to a process for a writer?
I would say so. It is definitely, because an editor is an experienced editor. They know about editing and about writing it in a certain way. And as a writer, as a creative writer, you're just writing it in a way that you would understand. But it's also important to test it again on a test group, maybe first, see if it's understandable, see if it's clear, see if it's easy, and then use the editor to change it. Maybe you just sometimes you're just changing the words, not even the whole sentence, to a little more easy for the people to understand the story. If the story itself is simple, I would say you probably would be able to edit it yourself. You can make it as complex as you want in terms of the language that you're using. But like you mentioned earlier, this one has science fiction. This Evolution Cradle has this book has science fiction, and it has history and mythology and thriller aspects to it. So at some point, it could become overwhelming for the reader.
Right.
To stick to the timeline, to have a linear timeline, so that you're not going back and forth, and also use language so that it's understandable for anyone, any kind of reader, any age group as well.
So do you want to make it deliver to the readers what they want, or still try to be original, or balance both? I think you did answer some of these questions, but
actually a bit of both.
Yeah.
Actually, a bit of both. Like I mentioned before, I like to entertain people. More than I entertain myself, I like to entertain my audience. I like to see their eyes go big. I like to see them smile or laugh or see the excitement on their faces. So I do tend to write more for the reader, but I like it to be about an original subject. The subject, I need to believe in the subject. I need to believe that genre. I need to believe on that in the plot. But I will deliver it in a way that the readers want it.
Okay. Yeah, I think, and maybe you said you're an actor, so as a performer also maybe that helps you in your writing to make sure as I said, to entertain the audience. So do you do acting as well?
Yeah, not as much as I did as a kid, or not exactly as a kid, but when I was younger, not as much anymore. But yes, so the way I write it is like a movie script. Basically, dialogues. It's mostly dialogues, less than narration. There's a lot of interaction between the characters. The character build-up is also in the form of a screenplay. So that I don't use the traditional way of writing. If you read the book, you'll see it mostly looks like a screenplay, like a script, like dialogue exchange. I mean, this can be easily used for a movie script without many changes.
Yeah.
You don't need. I mean, of course, you need a screenplay expert, but you can literally just start off the way it is written. So all that comes from my acting experience. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to see it in a movie someday and maybe do in it as well. So that's great.
I would love
producers out there watching the show. So yeah, just here's a script right here. And you mentioned about spirituality. So do you use spirituality in your writing process? Does it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the writing process for me has to be spiritual, because I need to go into the zone. I need to believe that I'm in that scene when I'm writing about a scene. So I actually cut off everything. It's like meditation. I shut everything off, and I enter into the plot. So wherever I leave the story the previous day, I pretty much go back into that scene, put myself in that scene, and then I continue the next page. Because otherwise it's just you're just writing just writing a story without a soul in it. So I that's the only way I can write, at least. There's no way. I tried, there's certain days where I just cannot shut off, and I tried to write, but it led to nowhere. So I would rather take a day off and come back the next day, put myself in that scene, shut out any disturbances, anything. Even if there's music playing in the background, I can still be in the scene. I can still be part of the characters, and then along with them, go with the flow and progress the story. So yeah, it is very spiritual, I would say.
Now, that's a good tip for a lot of writers who are leading busy lives and still trying to write, which is probably a majority. I think there are very few who are full-time writers, even if we aspire to be that. So I think that's a great tip to do a little bit of meditation or keep aside some time and then get into the zone. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. So
absolutely. I think it's very important. Otherwise, you'll probably, if you're not in the right mood, you're not in the right place, you're not sitting in front of your computer at the right time, wherever you're writing the story, of course, it may not be the same. You may end up anyway deleting all those pages. It happened to me so many times. I just came back the next day and it didn't make any sense. I was like, what did I write yesterday? What did I do? I just ended up removing all of it and writing the whole chapter again. There were so many chapters I had to rewrite because of this. So the ones that remained, it could be coincidence, but the ones that remained in my book are actually the ones where I was really completely immersed into the story. And I remember each and every page, each and every word.
Yes. I think it can, I think the readers can tell, and the story it does bring out. So
and the readers can.
I think a lot of your so many myriad interests, and all of it, you've used it for your writing. Is there anything we've left out? I don't know. You say you're a pilot also, right? Is there anything else that you've used for your writing which has helped you? Any thought process, anything else that you do?
Yeah, so actually everything which I have experienced, let me put it in other words. So everything I've written in my book are things which I've experienced myself. So that's the reason I was able to explain a few things in my book the way I did them. For example, deep sea diving. There's a chapter in the book where the characters dive in Dwarka underwater. And I was only able to write about it, not because I read about how, all the equipment works, how the cylinders work, what are the science that you use underwater. It's because I did those myself. Not in Dwarka, but I've done some deep sea diving, so I know how it works, and I have a couple of hours of experience. So that's why I was able to write about it. I was able to put myself again in the diver's suit with the mask and with the air cylinder, with the compressed air cylinders behind, because I know what it feels like. I have experienced this before. In the same way, like you mentioned, pilot, there are a few scenes in the book where there are airplanes involved. There are airports and airplanes involved. And I was able to write about what a pilot is going through, or what the passengers are going through, or how the airplane is behaving, just because I have done those myself, just because I know what a fuselage is, for example. I know where the engines are. I know where the throttle is. That's why it's easy to explain. And even the places, most of the places which I've written in my book are places which I've been to myself. So yeah. So I think it's also very important. You need to have experienced those, so that you can put those into better words, or you can explain those things better with first-hand experience.
It's like a very well-rounded book, and I guess well-researched. Everything which is good. So time now for the rapid fire round. And I keep saying that, okay, I don't have a hamper or anything, but yeah, let's go for it. Just one questions. What did you want to be at the age of 10?
I wanted to be a pilot, an Air Force pilot, actually.
Okay. All right. So some of it came true. Yes, that's great. And you mentioned a lot of travel. You're a globetrotter. So where would you like to travel next?
To Australia.
Okay. Right. The Great Barrier Reef, and do deep sea diving there, maybe?
Yeah. Australia and New Zealand, actually. I've never been there, so that's where I want to go next.
Okay. And I believe you're also a model. So have you modeled in anything that you've seen? What can I add? You modeled it?
I'm not sure you have seen any. So there is one car company which has advertised around the world. This one, I'm not sure you've seen it, because it was not aired in any mainstream media. It was only just online. Yeah, but other than that, primarily I've modeled in Europe. So it's mostly European companies, mostly restricted to Europe, restricted to Germany actually. German language and German.
Yes. And you mentioned that you acted when you're younger. So what's a role that you enjoyed playing?
The one I enjoyed playing the most is playing Vishwamitra. This I've done actually at the age of 9, 10 in a movie called Ramayana, or Balarama.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's also known as it's actually Ramayana, but it's more famously known as Balaramayana. And that's the movie I enjoyed the most. It's just because it was a huge group of young kids, and it's basically Ramayana shot with young kids. And I believe the youngest kid was 5 and the oldest kid was 16 or 17, something like this. And yeah, that was a movie I enjoyed playing the most. It was 2 years of one big party. A lot of fun.
Okay, that sounds fun. Yes. And you did talk about your artwork. I was going to ask you what's your most famous artwork, but you talked about the merge and you showed us the picture. Is there anywhere that we can see it, or in any form?
Yeah, so most of my artwork is in, apart from the ones which I've done for private clients, which are completely anonymous. Apart from those, everything else is on my Instagram. My Instagram handle is Charith Venkat. So my first name Charith, my middle name Venkat, Charith Venkat. That's my Instagram handle. The Merge series is on it, and also the Mafia series. So Mia Familia, Mafia. So my family. That's where Mafia comes from. So Mia Familia series. That's another series which I've done, which is just my family. And the one which is actually surprisingly the most famous artwork mine is actually one that does not have a name. It's a Lombardy woman. It's actually it was a newspaper article, and my mom found it when I was a kid on a newspaper, and she said, "Check this out. This is actually a nice. It was a real lady. I don't know the lady's name. I don't know if she's alive. I hope she is, and I hope she could see this painting. But it was actually a Lombardy lady. I believe she was living in Bombay at the time, sitting on a sofa, and it's a real person. And credit to her. And that newspaper article found by my mom was given to me, and my mom said that that's a nice subject that you can paint your next project, and that's the one I did. And there's a picture of this on my Instagram handle as well, and my mom standing in front of the painting.
Yeah. So yes, Lombardi is gypsy, I think, right? Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, gypsy. Yeah.
So you mentioned actually earlier when we were talking that there was you did some art for a movie. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So this one is done for a famous movie called Bahubali, and it was actually a gift to the producer of the movie, Shobu Yarlagadda. He's one of the producers of the movie, the main producer of the movie. And it's a scene. It's part of the merge series, but it doesn't belong to me because it's something I've done for someone else and given to someone else. So the merge series, again, it's part human, always part human and part animal, and it's always about finding the symmetry between animal and human, whatever animal it is, whatever species it is. This one is a tiger, for example, and that is the scene of Ballala Deva, that's the villain, and the Gaur bull. So there's a scene where Ballala Deva, played by Rana, and the bull, played by a computer. The bull, which is a Gaur bull, actually. You may think it's not a real bull, but actually there is a bull known as Gaur, which actually looks like that. It exists, the real bull. Maybe this certain bull in the movie might have been slightly exaggerated, but in form there is there is a bull. So the painting which I've done is a merge of both of those, which is also available in Instagram, and I could probably, yeah, if I find it quickly, I could probably show you. But yeah, so that's this one.
Oh, yes, yeah, fantastic.
So that's the bull, and that's basically Rana.
Right. Yeah, I
And,
can see. Yeah, that's
so yeah, the message is there's so many this symmetry between any animal and human, and which shows that there's a lot of similarities. They're pretty much the same.
fascinating. I think you're full of so many interesting things that you've done, and we can talk about it for a long time, but we've come to the end of the interview. I did want to ask you that what are you working on next? Is it along a similar theme? Is it something different?
Yeah, my next project is actually my next major project, at least, is a second part to the evolution cradle. My So what is my next work or next project, if you may? We actually just finished the translation from English to German, and there's a German version available, which is called Evolutionswege, Erwachen der Veden. And it's available on Amazon and a couple of local stores as well. And it was very important for us to do a German translation of the book because the two main characters are based out of Berlin, Germany, the German scientists who fly to India, and the book also has a lot to do with Indo-German history. So that's also one main reason why it had to be translated into German, which is why it's also very interesting for German readers equally. And apart from that, we also just completed the audiobook for the English version, done by Rhys Bernard from Australia. He's an Australian voiceover artist. And it's available across multiple platforms. All you have to do is Google Evolution Cradle in Google, and you'll find a bunch of providers who are actually right now selling the audiobook or where the audiobook is available. Apart from that, for the next project, there's going to be a continuation of the book. So the idea is to have a trilogy. So the next part is going to be a continuation, of course, from where the story left off. For those of you who read the book, you may have noticed many clues, especially as you get to the end of the book. And there's obviously a cliffhanger at the end of the book, which kind of gives you an idea may also throw you off balance. And that's basically the plan, to have a trilogy, a continuation of this book, and with each part it's only going to get more explosive. And I want to cover two of my favorite subjects around time and space, maybe in the next part or the one after that. But I have a couple of ideas. I put down a few ideas as well, and now I need to just restructure it into a plot. So those are my projects around the book itself, and I also have a couple of ideas for artwork, like the one you see behind, which is along the same theme as the book. Again, for those of you who've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. Cross-species genetics and human, animal, of course. And that's the idea for now. I will definitely keep you posted, and you'll see a few things popping up on my Instagram just as updates. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful to hear, Charith. Look forward to your trilogy. So for the viewers, some more things to think about. You can do translations, have an audiobook, have a series. It was fascinating to hear about the many facets of your personality, Charith. I totally enjoyed it. I hope the viewers did too. And look forward to having you back here as your trilogy unfolds, and to hear more about your writing journey and all your other interests. Thank you so much for being part of the show. See you next Saturday. Bye.